You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything screenwriting. Here we interview successful screenwriters and filmmakers to find out just what it takes to make it in the industry. All right, welcome to the podcast. We have on Thomas Dever, the head of development at Coverfly. Thomas, thanks for being on with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted to really chat about Coverfly because it's a really cool way of submitting your scripts to festivals and contests. And I like to kind of cover these different avenues because I'd like to get a behind the scenes look of what's going on and ways that you could provide for any of our screenwriters out there to kind of take advantage of your platform, right? But first, before we get into that, I do want to let's get a little bit of your origin story.
Oh man, where to start? I am originally from Ohio, and pretty much, I think like 2 weeks after I graduated undergrad, I moved out to Los Angeles to just start working in the film industry, and that sort of maybe stereotypical Midwestern way. Didn't have any sort of plan. I was like, I'm just going to go work in film.
Right.
And, the early part of my career, I worked, started reading at a production company that had a first look studio deal. From there, I was able to work under a producer making a Fox Searchlight film. So that was where I sort of got my crash course in both production and development and learned the skills basically of assessing screenplays that I still utilize to this day. And then I think I hit a bit of a crossroads in my career where the typical trajectory I think people would find is go get in the mailroom at one of the big four agencies, right, and that's it. You're on the career path. And I interviewed at two of them, and I won't name them, but they honestly, the interview just like frightened me in a way that I think my naive Midwestern self was not ready for. And even though it would have been the better, maybe more sensible career path, I was like, oh, I can't do this. And that just opened up a few years of really kind of bouncing around between many different endeavors, everything from reality television to teaching at a film school. And somewhere in there, based off of working for that production company with the studio deal, I was reading for screenwriting competitions.
Okay.
For screenwriting competitions, and I think that I went in admittedly, and I think you'll appreciate this as, you're familiar with the screenwriting competition space.
Yeah.
I remember when I would get the agency submissions at the production company, being so underwhelmed, being like, these are so collectively vanilla that being a professional screenwriter is a very attainable goal. Yeah. So when I went into screenwriting competitions and just doing it, freelance and moonlighting, thinking, wow, these are the people that like weren't good enough for that. What is the quality of this going to be? And I was so pleasantly surprised that the quality was amazing. And you had really excellent samples and really excellent voices and writers from just these fascinating backgrounds. And I should have known this, but I think that was where it clicked for me, that it's like, oh, it's not just about talent. No. It's not just about talent on the page. It is about talent and the intersection of opportunity and relationship and resources and all of these other factors. And I think that had really, really charted my course to where I'm at with Coverfly now, just sort of where, the company has grown in the past few years, particularly my position and my department, of bridging that gap.
Right.
And connecting those and realizing that if you do have the talent, we can supplement those other parts, right? Awesome. We can solve those problems of those relationships, those opportunities, those advice, those sort of things that I don't think are readily available to.
Yeah, let's chat about that for a second. So One, I mean, you sound, Thomas, you sound like a writer's writer.
Oh.
It sounds like you've done everything. I almost want to ask, like, did you have to live in your car? Like, it sounds like you've got that story going where you had to go down to LA. So, I mean, it's good to talk to someone that has that background, that understanding, and that empathy for
Sure.
what other writers are going through. With Coverfly, they're really kind of judicious on what I've noticed on the festivals that they bring into their network. And I can know this, and I can say this firsthand because I run Script Summit. I run the Script Summit
Sure.
screenplay contest, and we are running it. And everything we do is for screenwriters. We've got cash prizes.
Right.
We offer a contract with a Hollywood talent manager for one of our winners. Like, we really kind of go out there and try and make it happen, which just sounds like Coverfly shares that. And something I don't think a lot of people know is that Coverfly vets festivals. I was wondering if you could talk about that for a sec.
Sure. And I mean, at the risk of opening a significantly larger discussion, I feel like we could do like an entire like mini series on the world that is screenwriting competitions. As a person
Yeah.
in it, it's such an interesting little niche business, is it not?
Yeah.
And I think that people that aren't terribly familiar with it maybe get an impression and sort of generalize them together. And I think they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and different sort of goals and initiatives and people running it and affiliate partners behind them. I think what we ultimately like look at when verifying those our partners on the platform is what you just said. Are you actually providing value to writers?
Yeah.
And how do you sort of justify that? And sort of how can you really like point to that? Is it connections with the industry? Is it well-known mentors that are improving the craft? Is it successes of previous winners that they've gone on out of the opportunities created by the competition? I think the partner management side of the company could speak a little more in depth of that.
Sure.
But that it comes back to that core philosophy of everything that we do, which is how do we help these writers? And
Yeah.
if it's a competition that is just going to read the first 10 pages, take your submission fee, and then feel no obligation or any sort of sense in return to give anything back to you, that's not really someone that we want to have on the platform.
Right.
And it frankly gives a bad name to those that are providing legitimate service and value to the writers.
Yeah, I think that's it's so true, and I think it's okay for us to kind of dip into other festivals because, I mean, that's what I really like about Coverfly, because you guys actually approached Script Summit. You came to us and said,
Hmm.
"Hey, we're interested. We've been watching you. We've been seeing what you've been doing. We love what you're doing for the community," and then vetted our festival. And we were able to be on the platform. Now,
Right.
there's other platforms that do not do that, and there's tens of thousands of festivals out there. I mean, there's horror stories of people submitting to contests, and then never getting read or judged, and then you find out that the contest, they visit the address of the contest, it's in the middle of a desert. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing there. So there are some scams out there. There are some places out there that are just in it for the money. And I can tell you, as somebody that runs a festival, like, if you're doing it right,
Right.
your festival's breaking even at best. You're not
Mhm.
making cash on this. It's a very I almost want to say selfless in a way, because you're
Well,
putting in
it's
a
it's a
bunch
very
of effort.
it's a very passion driven thing, right?
Yeah,
I could dive into this that when because I know we want to talk a little bit about what my advice to helping writers, but
absolutely.
I think that the entertainment industry is undeniably a business and an industry, and you're talking massive revenue and profits for many of these companies,
Yeah,
but it is such an emotionally driven thing.
yeah,
And I think if you were a person that like all you cared about was getting rich, I would advise doing something other than screenwriting competitions or the film industry in general.
yeah, Yeah.
But you're there for it because you love it, and because it is that passion that's driving you. And I think that that's really across the board. And to what you said, it's selfless, but it's just passion is the one word that I kind of come back to with all of this. Because if you
Yeah.
didn't have that, I don't know if you would stick it out with this.
No, I think you're right. I mean, we're going on 4 years with Script Summit, and I can tell you that I love watching the community grow.
Hmm.
I am moved. I don't want to admit that I get a little teary eyed when I see people on the community page, on the Facebook page, supporting each other, even if they don't
Hmm.
win, and they're excited about the other person, and then seeing everybody come together and seeing people help and swap scripts, and just like, man, it warms my heart. I think you're 100% right, man. There is a lot of passion. It takes a lot of work, but you're not getting, if you're running a festival, you're not getting rich on it, man.
Hmm.
So, unless you're these other scams out there that are just taking money for nothing. But that's what I really respect about Coverfly. So I do want to get some of your advice on, and we can chat about this, like what scripts you think do well on Coverfly in particular, because you guys have this thing called the red list, and I think that's kind of interesting. And
Sure.
I'd like to hear about that. Like, what scripts do well? How do you improve your red list score? What can it do for you?
Right. Yeah, so I mean that's the thing, right? And that was really where this idea was born out of, which is you have people submitting to Script Summit and then getting coverage from this other service and then being a finalist in this competition, right? And before
Yeah,
Coverfly, we saw that it was just like it was so scattershot. And getting that all into one place for the writer profile, it does it accomplishes a couple of things. One, you get to put all of your accomplishment in one place and you get to
yeah.
actually sort of have a cohesive writer profile of everything that you kind of have done, but also this artifact makes it sound old, but like a documentation of how a bunch of different perspectives have responded to your material,
So is it like
which is
like a resume sort of?
it's like, but it's also, yeah, like a resume to a certain extent, like an aggregation. I mean,
Okay.
there's a component of like Rotten Tomatoes, I think, to it as well, because there's a weight behind it, and you get sort of like a confidence metric, which I can dive into,
Okay.
because I think that's one thing I would really love to reiterate to every writer is that there is no completely objective perspective on quality,
That's
right?
true.
And that is how you end up with what's the story, 70 people passing on Back to the Future,
Right.
or no one picking up Montauk, and that later became Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And that's it, because it's not, something is not undeniably good, or maybe no one's just like perfectly qualified at doing that. And so it's so important to remember that it's how people are responding to your material. And so if you can see, like, okay, I submitted to 10 competitions and 7 of them said that this was like a finalist level screenplay, you've got that data basically to have and to understand. And I
Yeah.
think what that accomplishes on two fronts, which is one, for the public facing side of it with your profile and all of that in one place, someone can say, okay, a lot of people have read this and said it's pretty good. This,
Yeah.
I feel safer taking a look at this. And likewise, on your end, you are able to track that progress as a writer. It's a very, tech company.
Well,
Yeah,
it sounds validating. One,
it
I mean,
is.
every writer out there
Mm-hmm.
has a little bit of an insecurity issue, if not
Sure.
imposter syndrome, full out. So it sounds like you can get on there and you can have some nice validation of, yeah, other people have read this, looks good. And
Right.
to build on your point, no one wanted Star Wars. No one.
Exactly. Yeah, the most
So
valuable IP
yeah,
in the history of
exactly. Well,
humanity.
it's sold for $1 billion to
Right.
Disney or something.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's true. It is a very subjective thing, and especially screenplay contests. Sometimes with a contest, you just don't have the right reader. And I know with Script Summit, we strive really hard
Sure.
to make sure that if we have readers that like horror, they're reading horror, and
Exactly.
they're not reading some other script that, or some other genre that doesn't work for them, so we try and do that, and that kind of helps with the objectivity ratio. But people are human. Sometimes a writer's voice just doesn't resonate with you, and it's
Sure.
going to affect the score.
Right.
So I think that is really cool. But have you noticed any kind of trends in scripts that tend to do really well on Coverfly in general?
Man, I mean, the thing is, I would like to say, because it's not like this monolithic thing, I think we're very
Yeah.
good at breaking it down by category, right?
Cool.
And so what you're able to do is not just break down, let's see, the top features and the top pilots, but you can
Yeah.
break down by a bunch of an ever increasing list of genres. So you can say, okay, let's look at the best horror features or the best action pilots and get that specificity. And then
Yeah.
even from there, because it is so dynamic and constantly changing, and we are just updating the data every second of every day, you
Right.
can be seeing what were the top scripts of the past week, what were the top scripts of the past month, the top
Yeah.
year. And that's both on the industry facing side as well as on the writer facing side. We are providing those metrics to you to see sort of how you're stacking up against people in the similar group, right?
Right.
Which is, oh, your dialogue is in the top 2% of other projects in this format and genre, but your plot is in the top 15%, right? And again,
That's cool.
that doesn't mean that you need to race and, oh, I got to go change my plot. It's like, okay, good to know. People are responding more
Yeah.
strongly to my dialogue than my plot.
You check in. That's all it
Yep.
is. You can check in and see where you're at. And I love it. I mean, I tell some of my students, I stress, when you're ready, start going into contests, because I want you to find out where you fall with your peers. This podcast is brought to you by thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com, where you can find instructional videos, blogs, books, and even screenplays from the biggest films in Hollywood, all available for you to download. Visit thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com now and receive a copy of the Guide for Every Screenwriter absolutely free. Yes, free. Just visit thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com. Now, back to our show. So if you come in at a quarterfinalist and you don't make finals, that tells you there's something going on that needs maybe a little tweak.
And I think that's something too, because we get that feedback from writers a lot, which is like, why didn't why wasn't my script good enough to make this? And it's not a remark on the quality of the script. And as much of like a maybe customer support canned response as that sounds, it's the truth. It's a competition is literally, how are you stacking up against? And some of these competitions get thousands of submissions and only advance like the top like 10% sometimes. So it's, take that with a grain of salt. No one said that you're a bad writer, that your project wasn't good. It's just, hey, the readers responded more strongly to this incredibly like high bar of what advanced in this specific competition.
Well, I mean, I think we need to be honest here. Your hopes and dreams should not be hanging on a contest. That should not be the way it is. It's just, what I recommend is submit to the festival and then move on, and then find out what happens. But don't sit there waiting and wondering. I actually had one of my first clients at We Fix Your Script I ever worked with. I did notes with him and chatted with them for a while, and I just found out that script that he's been rewriting it for years, but the script I had worked on him with, he won Nichols with, and I was blown away. I mean, that is just like such an amazing thing. I'm so excited, and I was touched to be just a small part of his journey. I mean, he did all the work, but just to be able to be there and see that. But he's the most humble guy, and he knows what it is. He submitted, he knows what it's going to do, but he didn't submit thinking like, this is it, this is going to be my big break, because you can't do that. You have to keep moving forward and finding your path. Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's a natural transition into working with writers and generating those opportunities. It's really what you said, so much of it. It's like, I don't ever want to put forth the impression that I am plucking just raw talent writers from obscurity and making their careers for them. That could not be further from the truth of what we're doing. We're really trying to give writers the tools to set themselves up for success. And I think what you just mentioned, the writers that we have been able to find the most success with are those writers that are, busting their whats and creating these opportunities and getting both the sample to a point that it's ready for opportunities, as
Hmm.
well as putting in the other intangible aspects of it,
Yeah.
that it's not, that they've gotten themselves, maybe depending on which sports metaphor you want to use, I think more people maybe get baseball, that they've gotten themselves to second or third base and we can get them home,
Yeah.
because that's usually what it is. Versus I don't want writers to ever sort of view any competition or initiative or program as like, well, I don't have to do anything, and I'm just gonna be winning Oscars next year if I
Yeah.
win, this sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I try and express to writers, and I've said this before, but your script is not your lotto ticket.
Hmm.
I always tell them it's your resume. It says, this is how I can write, this is what I can do. And then that is what opens up doors and opportunities. Doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that script is going to get made. I mean, the very first script I ever had that did really well, it took me around the world. And that still hasn't been made. It's been optioned a few
Sure.
times.
Yeah.
It's never been made. It's never been shot. But that opened doors for me. And I think that's one of the great things that you can get out of a contest, is to show like, yes, this is what I can do,
Sure.
and open doors. And I'm sure Coverfly is figuring out ways to kind of help arrange that for writers.
Yeah, I mean, I think, see it as that. It's validation. You should have confidence in sharing your material. You should leverage the
Yeah.
exposure that came with that, either directly or indirectly from that competition, to make those connections, to find
Yeah.
advocates, to find people that are looking for the work like that. And I think we've got the advantage of being on the other side, of seeing who all of those emerging writers are, and we're in a position to be that advocate.
I think you're right. And the other thing I can say, and I want to stress this because there's other platforms you can do well on a festival, but it may not be a very big festival.
Hmm.
It may not carry weight. And if I can say anything, if you do well on a festival at Coverfly, it carries weight because you guys vet fests so thoroughly. That's just my own opinion, at least.
Thank you. Yeah, I know, and I think that that's, like, as I said, it's just something we take very seriously.
Yeah, very good. All right. So, is there anything new kind of coming down the pipe from Coverfly?
I mean, it's faster. I feel like we're growing faster than I can honestly keep track of. We're constantly expanding. We just had our biannual pitch week at the end of September, and the next one will be in February. So anyone listening, I would strongly encourage you to submit on the Coverfly platform. For those who don't know, that's basically a week of virtual pitches with managers, agents, creative executives, producers, etc. It was the biggest one we'd ever had. This past time, we had 123 writers doing 250 pitches to 30 industry execs. We
So,
had
so how does
people.
somebody get involved with that? How does a writer get involved in a
Sure,
virtual
it's actually
pitch?
free. It's completely free to apply.
Yeah.
Yep. So just apply through Coverfly, create a Coverfly account if you don't have one, and submit to it, and make sure that, as I said, the profile is as up to date as possible,
And
so that.
the pitching process itself is free.
Yep, all of it. And
See,
then
I respect that so much. I really do, because there are so many like pitch fests out there that will charge you an arm and a leg for 5 minutes.
Oh, sure.
And
But yeah,
yeah, that's great.
because they're actual pitches, it's not 5 minutes. Each pitch is around 15 minutes. And what we do
Wow.
is we aggregate it onto a list that we send to the participating industry
Yeah.
members. And like I said, we had CAA, we had Fox, we had
Yeah.
Paramount, we had I feel like there's another one I'm forgetting, but MGM. So big places, but they actually select the writers that they want to hear the pitches from.
That's
So
awesome.
it's not this sort of, like, as you mentioned, this sort of awkward, like, hey, I paid for 5 minutes of your
Yeah.
time.
No,
Like,
it's yeah. So I love it. It's legit. I think that's what a fantastic opportunity for
thank
people.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
definitely
that
check that out.
that was our big one most recently. I mean, we're constantly we do live virtual table reads in partnership with Storytellers Conservatory through the Screen Actors Guild. So we're always using
Cool.
union actors. That's twice a week, also free to submit. And just my team's growing. It's I think we're sort of seeing that we're able to really generate more and more opportunities for the writers on the platform, that we're
Love
having
it.
to hire other people to assist with
Yeah.
it.
That's good,
So
man. That's
yeah,
a great
we're up
sign.
to 4 people in my department now, as well as
Yeah.
across individual brands. So
Well, I mean, I hear you. Script Summit's growing every year. It doubles, which is just, it blows my mind to the
That's
point.
amazing.
Yeah, to the point now where, I'm constantly chasing down sponsors to provide value to our award winners. Last year we gave out 90 awards from like Indie Film Hustle
Wow.
and I think you guys and so many places, Ink Tip, ISA.
Yep.
And then we had our Krista Keller Talent Award. And we actually, for this year, we picked up another Hollywood talent manager. So now we're going to have 2 different talent managers plucking winners for representation. Excellent. Yeah, it's That's just great. Like absolutely amazing just to see these things grow. Now, how is the community aspect of Coverfly?
I mean, it's growing every single day. I mean, and that's something that we're conscious of. I guess I don't want to make an assumption, but I think I'd be really surprised if we weren't the largest online platform of emerging screenwriters and filmmakers, just sort of like, because as you just mentioned, all of these other different places, we're not a competitor in most capacities. We're just bringing them all together into one cohesive place for the writer and streamline it to the industry. We certainly take the community aspect seriously. We put on a career lab summit earlier this year, which was online for Coverfly users to speak with panels that we had with showrunners and managers and agents, and really just sort of giving the advice of breaking in and this sort of unclear time in your career between really honing your craft at the level of being at the level for those opportunities and actually converting on them. We also have a peer-to-peer coverage service on the platform as well.
That's cool.
So you can get notes. Which is free. Also, you can get notes from other screenwriters, which is something
so you could communicate with them and do notes. That's cool. That's great. It's a good opportunity to get, and that helps you build your network.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would 100% be taking advantage of that. Now you're a writer's writer, but I guess you're also a filmmaker too. So what do you have? Do you have anything coming out on your own?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's completely independent. Like it could not, Coverfly, I think is very, I don't want to say broad, but it's very enmeshed in the industry, and we deal with a lot of the big agencies and the studios. And my production company that is independent of it is indie. That is my space and my passion, and that is what I'm just fascinated by, both from like a creative standpoint as well as the economic simultaneous limitations, but also opportunities of independent filmmaking. Okay. And my company is actually shopping a business model with our first film that was released on Amazon Prime earlier this year, which is For the Weekend. You can still find it there and watch it and give it 5 stars.
All right, so it's called, give it a 5 star. Is it called For the Weekend? I need a genre. You got to tell me a little bit about it here, man.
Sure.
Pitch it to me.
It is a contained thriller. It is a group of friends that head out to an Airbnb in the desert, back when that was a thing that people did. I think that also makes it a period thriller.
That's so funny.
But yeah, group of friends head out to an Airbnb in the desert, and one of them disappears, and that is the linchpin for sort of all of the manifestations of their strained relationships coming to a head over the course of the weekend as they deal with the fallout of that.
I love the idea of a contained thriller. I mean, just contained stuff in general is so difficult to write. It's an indie thing, of course, budget-wise, but I think if you can write and film a really good contained thriller that says what you can do as a filmmaker. So bravo to you. We will look forward to checking out For the Weekend.
Absolutely. And also I feel so I'm not just leveraging the company's platform. Also go to writers.coverfly.com and create your account if you haven't already.
Yeah, I mean, I recommend Coverfly. I just love the whole process about them. Thomas, I got to tell you, I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much.
No, thanks so much for having me. It was great to chat, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Oh, yeah, of course.